We're home. We just got back to Rediviva yesterday around noon. And it was a long day, but a really great day.
4 a.m. start.
Yeah, 4 a.m. start, but we were back to the boat and back to Mexico by noon. Yeah.
Yeah, everything went really simple. We traveled on Christmas Day, so it was actually pretty mellow.
And we were a little worried about some of the condition of the boat because we had been gone for quite a while.
Yeah, we were gone for longer than we thought we would be.
Yeah, and we didn't quite clean down below as much as we had wanted to, so we were worried about a smell. But we opened up the hatch, came down below, and she just smelled like a beautiful wooden boat.
Oh yeah, she smelled great.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is. There must be some sort of like force field.
Yeah.
Or like invisible bubble around Rediviva, but both times that we've left and come back, and this time was over a month and a half, there's not a single bird poop anywhere on the entire boat.
And there's not so even many places for seagulls to sit.
Not even a single one on the solar panels.
Yeah.
And like there's other boats out here that people leave and they're just covered. But both times, not a single bird poop. It's amazing.
Yeah. So we have lots to be thankful for.
Yeah, everything held up really, really good.
Yeah.
The boat, I mean, honestly, looks just like she did when we left her.
Yeah, some of the woods.
Except there's more barnacles.
Yeah, but we totally expected that, and I don't think it's any worse than we expected.
We're filming inside because the northerlies have definitely started in the Sioux Cortez, and looking at the weather report, it's like the next week, it's pretty solid northerlies, and today it's just really gusty. It's not too windy, but then all of a sudden it'll blow like 15, 18 for a little bit, and that might be a little much for the for the microphone.
Yeah, so we'll probably get back to regular filming on board Rediviva next week, or for next week. And so today we're gonna try and wrap up the rest of our boats. There's still 3 more to go. We have Ronin, our last wooden boat before Rediviva, and then we have Sirena, beautiful Sirena, and then we have Scout, which was the boat that we had before deciding to build Rediviva.
And yeah, we'll get started with Ronin, but real quick before we do, check it out.
Oh,
we got new t-shirts.
We got some new shirts. We'll film it better. But yeah, we got some new shirts. Kind of got our tagline that you guys say that you love so much. You're Coming Too has been a great way to, you know, just share that we're bringing you along every step of the way. So they're on bonfire.com. We'll have a link and all that good stuff. And if you like them, pick one up. It really helps support us, the channel, keep filming, and yeah, the boat running. So where we left off in our story was we had just sold Bravada, which was kind of like our racing style wooden boat that we had for a quick moment. And we find Ronin. And Ronin, at the time, did not have a name. We actually didn't even really know what kind of boat she was, but you had to do a lot of research. She was on some
sketchy title. As far as we know, she's a 1959 Ralph Winslow ketch. Just around 30 feet on deck, little full keel. Yeah, just really sweet little boat. And when we got her, she had had a lot of work done in her lifetime. You know, probably within the last 10 or so, maybe 10, 15 years. And so there's a lot about her that was really, really good. She had new deck, I think the cabin house, and everything was laid. She had new mast, new rigging, new sails at the time. And during this big refit, when they did it, they put a brand new diesel in the boat, had refastened the boat with Manel. So there's a lot that they had done. But then the boat, however she ended up in the situation she was in, I'm not sure, because it's very obvious that that refit, I'm just completely guessing when it was. I mean, I would say the earliest 10, maybe it was 20 years prior, but all the work that was done had still looked really, really good. Whoever did that put a ton of money into this boat. A ton of money and a ton of love. Somehow she ended up going downhill and obviously being neglected for a long time, because by the time we got her, she had obviously not been taken care of very well. And that had probably been going on for a very long time. And so despite having all of this amazing work done, she had been just... She
still needed a lot.
Yeah. When I started tearing into the boat and just looking through everything, opening up the bilge, it was really apparent right off the bat that nearly all, if not all, the frames, at least in the majority of the boat, were pretty much gone, like midway down, like right at the turn of the bilge, where the bilge was just full of water for years and years and years, and the boat was originally fastened just with galvanized steel, and those had gone many years ago. The boat was refastened, but they left all of the original galvanized fasteners in. So after probably years of this boat sitting with a pretty full bilge of water, all those steel fasteners started to rust out, and she had white oak frames, and white oak does not like rust. When steel starts to rust inside of oak, it creates this reaction, and it basically turns the oak into black mush.
Yeah, it's like pulp and squishy, and it just breaks apart in your hands.
So I could tell that most of the frames were shot.
Yeah, they're almost all kind of just done for.
Like below the turn of the bilge. But the planking was all really nice. She was all planked in Western red cedar, which is really light, but very rot resistant and holds up a lot better to that reaction in the rusting steel than the oak does. So above the bilge, where everything was still dry, all the planking was really good and the frames were fine.
It's still completely hard.
So there's going to be a lot more that I can't see, but you can kind of make a good assumption seeing that, what you might kind of see once you get into things.
So the boat had an interior, but it wasn't completely finished anyway. There were certain things about it that we didn't necessarily care for. And after discovering just the extent of all of these frames needing to be in some way, shape, or form repaired or replaced, Garrett just decided to gut the interior.
Alrighty. This after several days of cleaning and scrubbing and filling and draining and filling and draining and scrubbing. I want to have my inspiration picture up.
Yep. That was the only way to do it. I mean, there's no, with that much framework, there's no way to work around the interior.
Yeah.
And fortunately, the interior was pretty easy to take apart.
Yeah.
And I expected I would put a lot of it back in. But yeah, going into it, it would make the job so much harder if you tried to leave it in, tried to salvage the interior and work around it. So it all came out, and then I've got my first really good look of what's going on. And fortunately, it wasn't too much more extensive than I kind of figured that it would be, just based on what I could see. But yeah, every single frame, at least in the majority of the boat, the ends of the boat were okay.
The bow
up
and
in the
stern,
bow,
it was mostly the belly.
Yeah, up in the bow, somebody at some time had done some sisters that were, I mean,
questionably okay, but okay for now.
They're already in there, so
Yeah.
I've got the whole rest of the boat to do, so I left that how it was. But then started to decide, okay, how do I want to go about it? And obviously you can remove all the frames and put just all new frames in, but we were still limited with the materials that we had, the time that we had to do it, and just the money that we had to make it happen. Since all the frames were basically fine halfway.
Above the waterline.
Yeah, I figured, well, I can salvage those, but I also want to strengthen the hull because we wanted to take her cruising. And she was still framed fairly light. So at the time, came up with a way, cut out the bad sections of the frame, laminate in new sections up to where the frame is good, and then run a long sister alongside that and bolt them together. So essentially making a double laminated frame instead of one small steam bent oak frame. Because
was this, I remember there was some other form of framing, because there's steam bending, there's laminating, and then there was one version that's like, what did you call it? Futtocks?
Well, there's sawn frames.
Sawn frames.
Yeah, there's different ways that you can you can have sawn frames. You can either have naturally grown frames, which, I mean, are very strong, but you have to find naturally grown branches that are at the right curve. And then, but then you have a natural grain line that follows the curve of the frame, which is really strong. More common for sawn frames is to have double sawn frames, and then those are made up of individual pieces called futtocks. Usually a part of the frame that'll end halfway or so, and then it'll be butted into the next section. Sometimes people are scarf them, but a lot of times they're just butt. And then you'll have another layer which that side overlaps that butt, and then there's another butt, and they're all bolted together.
Okay, so
and
it's
so
like
they're made up
pieces.
Of however many pieces, depending on the size of the frame, but they're made up of individual pieces that are all fastened together to make one solid double sawn frame.
So you kind of took that method in a way and applied it to how you were fixing these frames, because it was like you were sistering them, but you were also, I mean, I guess more like creating a futtock. Yeah,
essentially. It's kind of some sort of mix because
a Garrett special.
I came up with that being the fastest method that I could do it, so we could get out of the boatyard and I could strengthen the boat, because I started doing full length frames because I thought, hey, I'm just gonna remove and reframe fully all of the frames in the belly of the boat. And I started doing that, and I got a handful of them done, but without removing the deck and all this stuff, it's just really time consuming. And I was doing laminated frames. Ended up doing nearly all the frames in the boat.
And it looked like madness. There were like sticks going every which way because you were doing multiple frames at a time and then laminating them in place, so you're gluing the layers all together, and you'd use these sticks and wedge them between whatever you could find, you know, wedging them up to the cabin top, or, you know, putting in spacers to work with whatever sticks you had.
Yeah, you
which
gotta
was
do what you gotta do.
Offcuts from cutting all of these strips to do the lamination. And so complete madness. Yeah, and I had to replace a handful of floor timbers too. Luckily, the boat, when all that work was done, they replaced all the keel bolts. So they were all new bronze keel bolts, which was really, really nice. But the floors that they were going through were rotted out. So I replaced a bunch of floors. But it was also kind of funny because throughout the boat's history, you can tell there was all that really, really nice professional work was done. Yeah. And then there was some really weird stuff that, like, whoever had the boat through the years just did some real funny, you know? So I would be like, part of me at first, I'm like, I'm going to rip all this weird stuff out. And then when I was in it, I'm like, it's already there. Yeah. You know, I'll just work around it. Yeah. And if it's not too bad. So there's a lot of different funny stuff going on. But I think what I did managed to really strengthen the hull up and get her back to a point where she was like pretty solid. I don't really know how I got on this kick, but I was getting more and more into just traditional methods, traditional ways of doing things. I think how it happened was just you're a nerd. And when you would be at the boat all day working on fixing all these things, then in the evening you would just dive your head into some book or watching some documentary, and you were just a total nerd. Well, yeah, I got in on just reading about how all the boats used to copper sheathe the bottom of the boat, fully just tar and felt and copper, and they would plate the bottom of the boat with pure copper, and that would keep the worms out. It works as really good anti-fouling, but it just really protects the bottom of the boat. It's a 20-year bottom job if you take care of it. So I was like, hey, we've got a wooden boat. We're planning on going to the tropics, so having the sheathing with the copper to protect against the worms, that would be great. And then we don't have to worry about, if we're in a place where we can't haul the boat out regularly, if we go for a lot longer, I mean, you'll still have to scrub the bottom, but it'll keep things from worms and stuff from getting in the hull. I was also just really into it. I like the idea of trying it out, but like, okay, it's obviously a much bigger investment initially, but then if you don't have to bottom paint for the next 20 years or so, then it's
definitely pays for itself.
And Garrett's really good at selling these big ideas to me, because all of that made a lot of sense, and not knowing a whole lot about boats either. I think one of the biggest reasonings for you can justify it, but one of the biggest reasonings for you is I think you wanted to do the project.
Oh yeah.
You wanted to challenge. You wanted the challenge, and I think the more that you kept looking into this, the less information you found about it. So the more you were like, the only way I can fully know about this process is to do it yourself.
Well, it took me forever to find real information because, I mean, people don't really do it anymore. But it used to be the standard. I mean, at first they would sheet the boat with lead, and then they moved to sheeting the boat with copper. So after spending so much time trying to figure out the process, how they did it, what steps they took, and I struck out until I finally found this like random old like book online that was like scanned, and it had some grainy old black and white photographs of the whole process. And then I found a few obscure things, but that were really detailed of how they used to do it. And I'm like, all right, sweet. This will
And
work.
I remember you showing me like a handful of pictures of, you know, just sort of looking at the picture and then looking at the picture next and the picture next. And you're like trying to decide what the steps were between each picture. And like, okay, well, that's how it looks now. That's how they're overlapping it. And so we copper plated the bottom of the boat.
Yeah, and I was able to find a really good deal online of completely pure sheet copper, just in really long rolls. And then yeah, he's
really great at sourcing things, because you found that online, some art, like garden art or something like that, and they were selling full rolls of it.
Yeah. Without going into too much details, the basic concept is you lay a nice thick layer of tar down, and then the old school, it was Irish felt that you'd use. Nowadays, you can use the roofing felt, like the roofing.
Which is what we used.
Yeah. So tar, layer of roofing felt, another layer of tar, and then you lay down your copper, and each copper piece is cut individually to kind of fit the hull. And then you have to worry about all your overlaps for the flow of water. And then you tack each sheet of copper into the hull with copper nails. So you have to be able to find obviously pure copper materials, because there's a lot of stuff nowadays that's really low quality or it's copper plated. But I was able to find pure copper roofing nails and get those, and so we nailed all the copper on with roofing nails, and I think it came out really well.
The people that we eventually sold the boat to, I think they've sold it now, but somebody recently, maybe like 3 years ago, saw her floating and said that the bottom copper plating looked fantastic. So that was really exciting to hear that it's still in good shape. Nothing was springing loose by any means. We would tack up or tape up the sheet of copper, and then you use like a batten. Is that right?
Every piece was different, because there's some pieces that had to be spiled, much like planks. But I would use pieces of roofing felt a lot to make patterns for them.
That's right, so
some I could just hold up and kind of use a spiling batten or whatever. But this is also when Ruth got her Tar Queen nickname. How's it going, my sticky Tar Queen? Because she was troweling on all the roofing tar. We had big buckets, 5-gallon buckets of tar. Yeah. And Ruth would just be underneath the hull. And we were working in Napa during the summer, like 100-degree weather.
It was
and
hot.
Ruth is up underneath the hull, just troweling on all this tar. And
big gloves. And I'm the only female in the boatyard.
All the guys would come walking by. They're like, damn, like, how'd you find a girl that would do that?
Where'd you find this one? I want one. How'd you convince her to do this?
After we copper plated, we got that done. We launched the boat and we started sailing the boat, and we moved aboard the boat, but there was still no interior. We were finishing the interior. I mean, putting it together just quick and simple, just so we had something to live on. But we figured we'd get to the interior later. Just, we basically just put some plywood up and have a Coleman camp stove, and
Yeah.
you
We were
know,
kind of still in, I guess, the mock-up stage.
Yeah.
It was like not quite a mock-up, but it wasn't finished by
But-
any means.
but we were taking the boat out on the river all the time. We're going out
Mm-hmm.
anchoring, we're sailing the boat. I mean, she was a fun little boat.
Yeah.
Then we got bored, I guess, and
It's hard thinking back, telling this story, because some things don't really have a rhyme or reason to it, or it's a bit fuzzy because it was a decent amount of time ago.
Well, we just get bored when we do the
Yeah.
same thing.
Yeah.
And also when we're not, like, the boats still weren't at the point where they're ready to go to sea and ready
Yeah.
to go cruising, and there's still a lot of work left. But we had been in the same place doing the same thing for so long, but we had got them to a point where,
Yeah.
like, well, now they're actually worth something.
Yeah.
Now we can sell them, and we can have a good chunk of change, and we can
Yeah.
get ourselves a boat. In theory, it was always get ourselves a boat that's ready to go,
Yeah.
but we never did that because we're also just, we'd find boats and fall in love with them and be like, we can fix them.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of the reason for it. Boredom, but also just not wanting to be doing the same thing, and like just wanting to mix it up and be spontaneous.
Well, I also remember, I think one of the other driving forces to switching it up again was the job that I was working at the time.
Mhm.
My boss was moving, and so my boss's boss offered me my boss's job, and I was 21. We were still 21 at this time,
and it was like a career job.
Yeah, I was offered this career job. I didn't have education in that field, but I was basically assistant manager of this shipping company, doing a lot of bookkeeping, and I did really enjoy the job. I enjoyed the people that I worked with. So Garrett and I naturally went out for Mexican food, and we talked it out over margaritas, and we talked about it for a really long time because it was like a really big offer, a really big opportunity. And I think this shed the right light that we needed at the time, to where it was, we were getting in this routine and flipping the boats. We could have easily kept doing that, but then we would have never cruised and traveled, which at the time was still so very important. And it was like, if we do this, we might never do that. And so I think that's what sort of pushed us to be like, nope, we're not doing it.
So you quit your job.
So I quit my job.
And we sold our boat. But
like, no society, no, I'm not ready. I'm not ready to
letting
settle
it
down.
wrap its tentacles around us.
Yeah, and it did a really good job at trying. Yeah, very good attempt, solid attempt.
So we decided to just purge, and we sold the boat. But this is also when Ruth told me no more wooden boats.
I didn't want another big project. I wanted to go sailing, and I was like, if I'm quitting my job and turning this opportunity down, we're going sailing. Like, we're gonna go. I want some sea miles. I didn't know much about sailing still at the time. I mean, Black Pearl was really my only true sailing experience, which we did a lot on. But now we had been through 3 wooden boat projects, and we had only done some sailing, a little bit in the bay before starting projects on Ronin, and then in the river, which isn't like, river sailing is fun, but it's not sailing.
Yeah, so
it's not ocean sailing.
So we sold Ronin, and we made a good profit, but not wanting another project, wanting something that was ready to sail, structurally sound. We still didn't make quite enough to buy a wooden boat that was just turnkey and ready to go. So I understood, and I accepted that, and
this adorable little boat came up for sale, a couple thousand over what we had in our pocket, but we thought, let's go check it out and see what kind of condition the boat's at. And so she was a fiberglass boat, but she had molded plank lines. So I was like, Gary, she looks like a wooden boat.
Yeah, she was a double ender, had molded plank lines, teak, lots of teak, and she was a beautiful little boat. And just, I mean, as far as all the boats that we've had, I still, hands down, I think she was one of the best I think, design boats. She sailed amazingly well. She was comfortable.
She was a blast to sail.
Yeah,
we
and
sailed so much.
She was built very, very well. She was an Aries 32. I think she was a 1981, which is also the newest boat we'd ever had.
Yeah.
They made a handful of different Aries, different kind of styles and models, and I don't know if they're all at the same yard, but they were built over in Taiwan. I don't know if they're built in different yards or if it was all in the same yards, just different years or different ownerships, because there's some that were built to very, very different degrees of quality. Ours was incredibly high quality, very, very, very well built. Yeah, she was just a sweet little boat.
Yeah.
And we managed to get her over in Redwood City. She was still in the Bay Area. We did some stuff right off the bat, like we got some used solar panels. It was actually our boat neighbor.
Yeah.
And so we bought some solar panels for really cheap, built a little mount for him.
He was redoing his solar, so we bought his old ones.
Yeah.
He found a monitor wind vane.
Yep, found a wind vane, a monitor on Craigslist for a really good price.
Used wind vanes go like that.
Oh, yeah.
So you were looking like,
you have to
I don't
hop
know
in the car as soon as you find it and drive there, or you won't get it.
Yeah, you were looking online like 4 or 5 times a day. And I think you got it within an hour of it being posted, called the guy, and was like, where are you? I'll drive right now. And he said he had already gotten a handful of phone calls, and he was like, honestly, I want my phone to shut up. So, yeah, it's yours. I won't answer the phone to anybody else. And so we got it. So it was like a score.
We got some gear, but we didn't have to do too much. The boat was pretty good.
Yeah, good power wash.
Yeah, a lot of cleaning. That was the main thing. We were able to just pretty much go shortly after buying her. And we just went straight out into the bay and started sailing full time. We got rid of the slip and just started living on our anchor. We still had a good amount of friends that were kind of bay cruisers as well. And so we just immediately started getting back into the kind of cruiser vibe. And that was so nice after being, for the last couple of years, just being in the boatyards, not cruising very much. But we're doing raft ups and going sailing.
Just before we left the slip, I had my 22nd birthday, which is in August. So we were 22, you were almost 22. Garrett's a couple months younger than me.
Yeah.
The season for hopping down onto Mexico was rapidly approaching. And we felt pretty ready.
Yeah, so we decided we were going to try to go back down to Mexico that season. Left to head south. We hopped our way down the coast, and my brother was actually, he had been in the Navy for the previous, I don't know,
4 years.
Something years.
Don't kill us, Reed, for not knowing.
Yeah. So he met up with us in San Francisco Bay, and then we kind of buddy boated, hopped down the coast, and ended up in Morro Bay.
Yeah. So back to our home port.
Yep. And
then the window for this season was getting later and later.
Yeah, and we did what a lot of people would say is the smart thing, but for us it's never the right idea, because it ended up like Ruth said, the window was rapidly approaching, and we had gotten to Morro Bay, and we had gotten a really good mooring, liveaboard mooring, and we had both gotten jobs on the waterfront, and we were making good money, and my job was great. My boss was the coolest guy ever, and I was bartending on a little tiki boat, like a tiki tour boat.
Yeah, I should have quit my job and come work for you guys.
Yeah, we talked about it, like, hey, we're in a good spot here. We've got a inexpensive mooring with liveaboard. We both got jobs. We're making good money. We can wait one more season, and we can save, and we can upgrade the boat, and next season we'll be in a so much better spot, and like things will be really easy, and we can go. And so we decided we were going to try to do that. But shortly into it, we're just like, what the hell are we doing? We're just living on the boat. We're in the same place, doing the same thing every day, just working.
We found it hard for us to save money. And the whole point of staying through the winter and through the spring and maybe leaving sometime that following summer was to save money. But we were just, I don't know, bored. Just doing the same thing over and over. So we'd go out a lot. Yeah.
We were just completely stagnant.
Yeah. A few upgrades on the boat here and there, but she really didn't need much, which made you more bored.
Yeah.
And we also had some friends crashing on the boat with us, and this was the first time that we thought about sailing with crew. But little Sirena is little.
We had 4 people and 2 dogs living on this tiny boat at one time, and I mean, we managed surprisingly well, but then we seriously started talking about, you know, cruising as a group, and then that conversation became more and more serious, and so we decided to sell Sirena because she was worth a good amount of money. Those boats have a great resale value, and we had really made her nice. Like we had made her really visually, aesthetically nice, and she was in really good operating condition. And so we're like, hey, we can get a good amount of money for this boat, and we can buy some, like, a big kind of fixer-up cruiser, and then we can go at it as a crew.
Yeah, because now there'd be 4 people able to work on the boat, and a bigger boat meant we'd have room for everybody. So we kind of went on the hunt again for a bigger boat, still living on Sirena. And after the crew kind of situation seemed to fall apart, everybody decided to go separate ways. We weren't really finding the right boat. And but Sirena was still up for sale, and her new owner found her, and we followed through with it. Yeah,
and so also because regardless if we did the crew thing or not, we were still just bored and we wanted to switch it up. So we sold Sirena and, you know, made our best profit yet.
Yeah.
And then we found another boat in, was it Marina Del Rey?
Marina Del Rey.
Yeah.
So I still convinced Garrett to stick with fiberglass.
Yeah.
And
I don't know how you did this one, because we had moved from Sirena, who was fiberglass, but she was still very kind of aesthetically traditional. She had a lot of wood. She had that aesthetic vibe, and we were looking at a bunch of boats, and we found this boat that came up for sale, Scout. She was a Ronin 30, and we had to go look at her because she was so incredibly well dialed in. She was absolutely turnkey.
Well, this is how I convinced Garrett, because Ronin 30s are not a top high dollar boat, but still a decent boat. So the price was right, and we could take the money that we had made with Sirena and still have some money to go cruising, even with buying this other boat. And Scout being turnkey, there was no project to stop us from going back to Mexico that year. And it was about the summertime, so we could sail out in the Channel Islands like the whole summer. And I was just like, this is it.
Yeah, I mean,
and I was very, very pushing for it.
That boat was so well set up and so dialed in that you could, no joke, you could provision her and just cross an ocean. I mean, she was that dialed in, which was really, it was pretty incredible. So for the price that she was, we had to go look at her. I've always liked Ronin 30s, but this boat, it was very heavily modified, and everything had been gone over and everything had been rebuilt, and most people would probably love it, but every single surface was shiny, brand new, glossy, new gel coat or polished stainless steel. Everything was chrome.
Which is not your aesthetic.
Honestly, it just felt sterile. The whole thing felt like, I walked down below and I felt like I was walking into a dentist's office. Open up the bilge and it smells so fresh, like cleaner, and the bilge is shiny. The bilge, you could wipe your hand anywhere in the bilge and like your hand would probably be cleaner than it was before. It was crazy. And which is all, I mean, it's all great, but to me, the boat just felt lifeless.
Yeah.
So immediately when I walked down below on the boat, I was like, no, it's a no. It's a hard no for me. I'll finish looking over the boat. You know, the broker's already here. He's already taken his time. So we'll finish looking at it. But I'm like, already written it off. I'm like, nope, this is not the boat.
And I had some similar feelings, but my logical, rational mind was, this is it. Because we had been so many years, so many boats away from the cruising life that really sucked me into the whole boat world. You know, after our time on Black Pearl, it was like, I could really see doing this. And now we had been not doing that. And I very much needed to feel that again. And I think Garrett really listening and hearing my needs and my reasoning, I now was the one that was making all the justifications for the decision.
You really made your case of why you wanted to go for the boat, because the conversation started out with me saying, well, not the right boat, you know, search goes on. And
I was like,
you're
really?
like, well,
what about all these reasons?
Decided, all right, we'll go for it.
Yeah,
and
we offered a little bit less than the asking price too, which sort of was like, if they say no, then we keep searching.
I offered a lot less.
Yeah.
And the broker, I talked to the broker for a bit because the guy had come down so much on the price, and the boat was way, way under what it should be worth. I mean, the boat entire cost of the boat probably wasn't even the amount that the previous owner had spent on all the gear.
Yeah.
But, you know, he just wasn't able to sell the boat. And
it was on the market for a really long time.
It had been on the market forever. And the broker and I were talking, and he's like, he's not going to be happy. Like, he's already lowered the price so much. And I'm like, all right, I'll sweeten the deal. I know that he wants to get this boat sold. It's been so long. And it had already gone to, they'd already done haul outs, and they had done surveys and sea trials with so many people, and it never went through. So I'm like, tell him that if he accepts this offer, we'll be there on Monday or whatever with money in hand, and we'll buy the boat right there. Yeah. No survey, no sea trial, nothing. We'll just buy the boat and the deal will be done. And he's like, he might be into that. And sure enough, he bought the boat, and immediately left the slip and went straight out to Catalina Island. Yeah. And started cruising the islands. And that was a blast, because that was like, talk about like 0 to cruising right away, because Catalina, the Channel Islands out there are so beautiful. It was at a great time of year. The water was clear. It was warm. I mean, we were back to spearfishing and swimming, and it was great for a little bit.
We were sailing around Catalina, and I'm loving it. Still thinking, all right, we're getting to Mexico this year, finally. But after a little bit of time, Garrett started to do some of these projects, just getting itchy for a project.
I was so bored.
All of the trim in the boat had been finished with finish washers, but you could see all the screws, but that was the
really
finished.
Clean and really nicely done.
So he goes around. We're in the middle of paradise in Catalina, and he's down below sinking and bunging, wood plugging.
I was pulling out every little fastener in the trim and countersinking and wood plugging them, because that's how bored I was. I mean, I've never been a person that can just sit on the beach in the sun. Like, I like to go and do things like spearfish, but you know, I can only do that so much. And I was so bored, and then I was just reading all the books that I still had about boat building, and you know, that's when you know, the little voice in the back of my head started getting louder and louder and louder, and it just became really apparent that I was not going to be happy on this sailing a dentist's office. Like it was so sterile. But that's when I started to remember more and more the conversation that we had when we were still in Sirena, back up in San Francisco, where we had met a solar sailor who came down from Washington, and we met up with him in Clipper Cove in the bay, and we ended up rafting up with him for like weeks.
Yeah.
And we went from never knowing this guy at all to being like super close friends. Living every day together, communal meals every day with our boats tied up together.
Yeah.
And so we just became really good friends really fast. And there was one night when we were just drinking beers and, you know, talking about stuff, and I brought up how this dream had kind of started with me to build a boat from scratch. And I had it throughout all the refits and the rebuilds of the old boats. Like I just started building more and more and more, and I just really, it became something that I knew that I had to do. And so I was just talking to him about that, and I was like, man, and I really think that I can. I believe that I've got the ability to do it. What I don't know, I can learn. But the hardest part about it is finding a place to do it, because I mean, we can't afford to buy land, and we probably couldn't afford to do it in a boatyard either, paying the monthlies and buying all the materials. Plus, a boatyard would probably never let two 20-year-old kids build a wooden boat from scratch these days. And so I'm like, that's the major thing. And he listens, and he's just like, huh, like as nonchalant as can be, you know, my family has a bunch of land up in Washington. They'd totally let you build a boat. And we're like, really? And he's like, oh yeah, they'd be fine with it. And
interesting.
Just like it's no big deal. And in the moment, it sounded, I mean, we were in the middle of doing something else, and it also just sounded too good to be true. So we kind of like, that's really interesting, but we kind of left it on the back burner. But it was at this time on Scout, the next boat down in Catalina, when I remembered our buddy DJ is his name. DJ's words were just getting louder and louder and louder in the back of my head. And so we did a 180 and we sailed all the way back up north. We went back around Point Conception.
What convinced me was that this dream of building was building, that I saw you sitting on the beach at different places in Catalina when we'd be traveling, and I can see what we're doing, and I'm having a great time, and I'd look over at you, and you'd be sort of like just in your thoughts, staring at the sand, and I just knew this wasn't it. We're not going to Mexico this year.
At the time, my sister was having a baby up in Portland, and so we were going to take a trip up to Portland anyway. That was close to where DJ's parents lived and close to where the property was. So DJ's like, oh yeah, go chat with my parents. You know, they'll show you the property and stuff. So we're like, well, we're up here. We might as well. Like the whole time we were thinking like, I don't know, DJ is making this sound like it's no big deal. Like it's no problem, but we'll see when we meet his parents. They might be really skeptical, but yeah, they were totally chill. They're like, oh yeah, you can build a boat. That's fine.
Yeah, I remember we were chatting with his dad, and towards the end of talking with him, he was just like, so when you moving up? It was like it was already a done deal.
Yeah.
And so this was October time. We kept sailing Scout further north because we knew that the market would be better in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. So we sailed to where we knew we could get the best price for selling Scout. So after we sold Scout, we found a truck and we piled all of our belongings and swab into the truck, and we moved north. So this was about February time. We spent a few weeks with your sister in Portland acquiring the rest of what we needed.
Tools,
the bare minimum that we needed to start building the boat.
Yeah.
And so we got a generator.
Mm-hmm.
We found a travel trailer to live in, and I think a few other random tools that you didn't have at the time. And we loaded the truck once again and moved to the property.
Mm-hmm.
Got the travel trailer set up and bought our first load of lumber to build the shed to start building the boat. And this brings us to March. So we went from October still having our other boat, still potentially sailing down to Mexico, to, all right, this building thing is happening, let's put it into motion. And we were cracking in on building the boat in March the following year. And we had just turned 23. So we were 23 years old, and we started building this girl.
The rest is history.
The rest is history.
Well, yeah, that's finally took us a while. We thought we were going to sit down and talk about all of our boats in one video and then have to figure out what the hell we're going to do for the next videos. But obviously, it was a bit of a story and took some time to get through. So hope you guys enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And yeah, hopefully next week we'll be back with a more normal video.
I know some people have asked for sort of a quicker from building the boat to now kind of video, so I definitely have that on my mind.
We've also talked about doing like a walkthrough tour of Rediviva, just in details of going through everything on deck, on the interior, whatnot, and so feel free. Any ideas, throw them out there.
Excited to get sailing and to share with you guys our ideas, not our plans, our ideas for this upcoming year. And last thing, if you do want a shirt, again, the links will be somewhere, and check out our little merch store.